over to America in the early 1600s. Basically, right after the Chesapeake Bay area was developed, they went to another place not far from Chesapeake. And they went there and helped establish, there was already people there, but they helped establish a fort there. And when they got there, they found that it was in poor shape. There was trash everywhere. They were scared to death of the Indians. They had built their fort small. They lived inside it. They would only go out just a little bit to do something outside the gates and rush right back. They were like scared little rabbits. And when the Scots-Irish got there, that family, the Cooks, the Jewells, and the Meads, they taught them things because they were very well accomplished before they even left. They were blacksmiths and they were teachers. Some of them spoke Latin. They studied catechism. Some went away from home to be taught in colleges and schools and came back home, and they taught everyone else at home. They learned horsemanship. They had jumpers. They had a lot of pride in Irish and Scots with their horses, and they had hunting dogs. It was the best. The king loved their dogs. And they had all kinds of abilities. And when they went to the fort, they taught. They taught them all how to take care of themselves. And they hunted and fished for them. They taught them not to be afraid. At the time, they were traveling Cherokees, and some were friendly, some were warring. And Shawnees they always liked to fight. And there were a group of Indians called the Monacans. They were from the East Coast. They befriended them. And some of the Cherokees that had traveled, along with the Monacans, had told them, there's mountains away from here, far away, past the river of death. And you will find a mountain that will take care of every one of you for the rest of your lives. You'll never want for anything. Plenty of game, honey trees, water fresh, fish, you'll never want. And so after the king had made some new ruling coming in about tariffs and allotments of seed and what to plant and whatnot, they didn't like that. So you'll read how they made their escape to a high mountain, which is now in West Virginia. I actually named some places that are really there, except for Slip Creek, West Virginia, and I made that up. They went to the top of this mountain. It took them a while to get to it. When they got to the top, it was a total plateau, adjoining other mountain ridges. There they built this cabin, the first cabin, and from then on, they added to the cabin, other cabins were built, and they lived up there for over 400 years, and no one lived there. No one. When they went to hunt, they went off the mountain to hunt in case they were followed, because they still thought that if they were caught by the king, they'd be hung for treason for leaving. This went on for a couple hundred years. They actually thought the king was still going on. The Civil War actually came and went without them. There's a story in here where a couple of the guys that were out hunting, they looked over a ridge and lay down and watched, and there was a battle below them. And they watched men in gray and men in blue fight each other, and then leave the dead bodies after it was all done, left the bodies, and rode off. None were buried. They rode down and got what horses they could. Come together. Okay. And got saddles. There was actually guns and powder and powder horns, and everything was left. They went down and got it all, and just left. They got what bounty they could carry and left. But like I said, the Civil War came and went. They didn't even know what was going on. And one of the stories I want to read to you today is about Little Sully. Now, Little Sully was a runaway African slave. I should have marked it. Let me look that up. I guess that's the best way to do it. That's what we're taught to do as students. Story of Little Sully. If you remember, she's on page 100. Also, I did all the artwork in the book. I did the cover. The reason it's called my book, it's got a hole in it. I guess I better start talking about that. There's a young man at Concord College named Stephen Weaver. He's in the journalism class. He comes into the morning class, and his instructor is wild. He's walking all over, talking so loud, and talking so quickly. He's spitting on you as he talks, you know. Something had happened in the news that morning. NBC had it, CBS had it, ABC, and on the radio. A 100-year-old mountain woman living in West Virginia had 700 journals from ancestors. And a family, a black family in Detroit, wanted to connect with this family in West Virginia. And she said, she ran the NBC guys off. The brothers stood there with the guns and ran them off the mountain. ABC and everybody was run off the mountain. She said she wouldn't talk about it, only to students of Appalachian history, or West Virginia history, or Virginia history, or Tennessee history, or North Carolina history. Only students. So nobody had stepped up so far at Concord College, and his professor said, somebody in this class has got to do the write-up. I'll tell you how to get there, I'll work with you. You all got to go and take that interview. And the more he talked, there was a lot of students there from New Jersey. They just didn't care. No, Appalachian, who wants to hear about anything Appalachian? Well, the more Stephen listened, it was like the electricity left from that professor's hands into Stephen Weaver's head. He got fired up. He thought, I could go get this and be rich. I'll write about it. I may even get into the Bluefield Daily Telegraph. Maybe Beckley paper. God, could it go as far as Morgantown? And he's thinking, and he's doing cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching on that cash register. He's thinking, I'm going to make this money. So he goes. They lie. They put a badge on him and said he's a history student from Concord College. He was really a journalism student. And he goes up to Slip Creek, West Virginia, up this mountain that he thinks he's going to die on. And on the front porch, a long front porch, on the biggest cabin that he had ever seen in his life, was Ida Mae Cook. And she began to tell the story of her family. And one of the stories that she told, let me show you a picture of Little Sue. If I can find her. Yeah. Where are you, Sue? I know she's here. I wrote it. This is Little Suey. So you all know what she looks like. Yes, I have a vivid imagination. As Ida Mae promised, she would answer more questions as soon as she got settled back in her chair. She fluffed her cushions and sat back and stretched her arms out, put her wrinkled hands upon her legs, and gave that look that meant it was time to start again. The first student to speak at the moment was from Radford Women's College. Also, I meant to tell you, this is 1970. She asked about the article in all the newspapers about a black woman whom the Cooks had harbored and protected until she could make her way up north during the Civil War. That was the story that started the whole thing about Ida Mae and her connection to a black family up north. The black family was interviewed by the morning show in the evening news, and the whole world had become aware of Appalachia and this 100-year-old white woman who kept secrets of historic value that the world wanted to know. Lordy, I don't know what all that hoopla is all about, she said as she turned to us. My grandma helped some poor little girl in need. That's all the code up here in the mountains. We do not turn any of God's injured creatures away, man or beast. Well, I just couldn't figure it out why people wanted to know all about this, she said as she shook her head. I knew most of the story because my editor filled me in. The family helped a runaway slave that made it to the mountains. This black woman's grandchildren and great-grandchildren wanted to meet Ida Mae and the rest of her family and let them know how everything turned out and to thank the family for saving their ancestor. Ida Mae had no idea or even considered the story had reached national news press, Canadian news press, American television, everybody in West Virginia, and to every politician in the tri-state area. Ida Mae was just plain shocked that everyone else knew the story. She told us that she knew the story that had been passed down from woman to woman in the family, and she hadn't read the details for many years. She said that she had to go back into her journals to freshen up her memory, and when she finally found her grandma's journal, sure enough, there it was. The story of a young African slave woman named Suli. I watched her sit back in her rocker, and she looked up to the sky, then closed her eyes. It was obvious she was thinking about years past, and she smiled as she started remembering the stories of her mama, her aunts, and her grandma, that had told her and her sisters. Still with a misty look in her eye of memory, she spoke. Well, one of those boys was out hunting one morning a few miles down in the valley. I think it was Uncle Elbert. He found Suli half dead lying on the creek bank. She had cuts and bruises all over her body, and her feet were blackened, and she was wet, shaken, and was unconscious. Uncle Elbert wrapped her in a blanket and put her on his horse and carried her back up the mountain, and the whole family tended to her. It was days before she came around and could sip broth and water. Bless her little heart. She was scared to death and didn't trust anybody at first. Heck, I don't blame her. Can you imagine a passel of kids and grown-ups looking down at you in great wonder? Her skin was dark, and she looked different from the rest of the family. Finally, after a while, she decided she was among friends. Besides, she didn't have enough strength enough to whip a cat if she wanted to get out of there. Weakness and starvation have a way of making a person more sensible. She was a Christian woman, and they raised her that, and they assured her that the Cook, Meade, and the Jewell families were also God-fearing people. They read the Bible to her at her bedside every day that she was bedbound. She liked that. She mended quickly with grandmother's tonics and poultices, but she had nightmares. She had nightmares about her past. Little Suli stayed there, living and helping them just like family, for about 18 to 20 months or so. This was the first time any of them had seen a Nubian woman, but they had read about them in the Bible. It was in some of the first journals. It seemed the English court had black slaves, and my ancestors had seen them. Great-grandma swore that Suli was from the lost tribe of Israel and thought of her as a holy person. She wrote that Suli's skin was the color of fine, polished mahogany, and it would glow by the firelight. Her fingers were long and her hands were beautiful. Her back and her legs were scarred by the beatings a harsh master had given her, but her memories of her past were scarred deeper. She wore 2 large braids of hair that wrapped around her head and looked like strong ropes made of silk. They never saw her hair down after she got well. Suli's eyes were big and looked like 2 shiny pieces of coal. Her teeth were as close to perfect as one had ever seen, and when she grinned, she brightened up the place where she stood. She sang songs that her mother had taught her in her native tongue. She sang all the time. Suli would sing as she gathered eggs or while she was sewing or anything that kept her busy. She was extremely clean and baked regularly. She made herself a pallet on the floor by the fireplace and would quickly pick it up in the corner and put it in a basket that she had made before anyone would get up. That little girl learned to cook and sew as good as my great-grandma. She also learned to play the fiddle, thanks to my great-grandpa and his oldest boy. Little Suli made a beautiful instrument from a dry gourd and strung it up and played it with the greatest of ease. She added to the evening music playing, and she enjoyed herself immensely. Suli took to Irish and Scots music like a duck to water. Playing and singing came so natural to Suli as to breathing. celebrated life and played and prayed with a joyous song and great spirit. She loved to sing religious songs. The joyous heart and soul of Sully only convinced Grandma little Sully was a messenger of God. We were all under Ida Mae's power at that as she continued with her magic spell. She took her time and started again. In the beginning, little Sully was shy and very quiet. But that was because she was in a strange place and was never taught anything and had bad things happen to her. Grandma figured that little Sully was close to 13 or 14. Sully started gaining confidence and self-assurance when she learned how to do things for herself. The family taught her to read and write her name. She learned quickly and loved to read the scriptures. She was a big help in putting up food for the winter and helping in the gathering of wood. Little Sully was very good with animals and she loved to gather eggs in the morning. Grandma wrote that Sully was a house slave and didn't know anything about the outdoors, other than the shack that she lived in with her mother and her two sisters, whom Sully never saw again. I may talk more about Sully. Little Sully told the family about slavery and the Great War, how the young black people had been hunted down by their own kind and sold to white slavers, and then taken by ship across the big ocean and sold to whomever would pay the price. Her family had started out serving a wealthy family on an island before they got to the mainland. Then her family was sold to a plantation in Virginia. She was one of the lucky ones because she had not been sold away from her mother or her sisters. The slave owners were like those in the Bible, like Pharaoh and the Israelites. When God set his people free, that should have been the end of slavery. Some of the slave owners, she said, were not so bad, like the big man on the island, but there were some that were mean and heartless, like Sully's master in Virginia. We did not uphold slavery, or any ideas like that. It was against everything we learned in the Bible. The whole clan became very protective of Sully as she became like one of the family, and the family became even more convinced of the evils of slavery after they were educated by Sully and heard her whole story. Sully was at that time the only real outsider the family allowed up on the mountain. It was hard for Sully to understand that the family did not know much about the goings-on in the rest of the country. But she eventually understood the secrecy and found up here to be a safe place to live and grow. All the families loved her. Our Indian friends liked Sully too, and she seemed to find comfort in knowing other people that were almost as dark as she was, and she loved their music as well. She loved their drums and the way they would chant. They honored her and taught her many Indian customs, like cooking different foods and their ways of healing from the forest and from the spirit world. Sully was like you young students in the way that you like learning. She hungered to learn new things about the forest and about just living differently. The only thing that's different is Sully had to learn to survive the rest of her life. You learn to enhance your life by learning from your mistakes or the mistakes made by others. Sully didn't have that opportunity when she was young. She was like a little sheep just doing what she was told, with no one of her own, no thought of her family or family ties. Great-grandma and great-grandpa taught Sully all about the woods and how to survive alone. She learned how to fish, how to look for edible roots and greens, and how to find wild honey trees, and to find medicine in the woods that the clan used every day. The family gave back the gift of knowledge of the mountain that they had been given all those years ago by the Indians. It was only right that they had helped her. She would not be a threat to them, especially since Grandma saw her as a walking miracle from God. Those miracles are far and few between. How much time do I have?
Keep going.
You sure?
Yep.
You can stop me now with it, because I can go on and on, honey.
You got 45 minutes.
Sully could make a shelter faster than some of those Indians up here could. She learned to hunt and use a bow and arrow just like the Indians, and she helped to bring in rabbits, squirrels, turkey. She liked to wear moccasins like the Indians as well. Little Sully learned mountain ways and mountain critters, which made her a stronger person. In the beginning, like I said, she was afraid of everything. She did not like bugs or critters of any kind. However, she learned that life is full of critters, and God made everything under the sun. Susie was not afraid anymore. Susie had a pressing dream of heading up north to a place where she never had to look over her shoulder. She waited till the winter was just over with and hoped that those chasing her had forgotten all about her by that time. Leaving during the rainy part of spring makes traveling a lot bothersome, but it keeps a human scent down and makes it way harder to track when the rain washes the prints away. The family sadly packed up Susie with a sack of biscuits, boiled eggs, hardtack, and some honey, along with soft pork. They made a strap for her board instrument and strapped it to her back, gave her a long hunting knife and some flints, and taught her how to stay on the ridge tops in which she was to travel, and how to travel north. Uncle Albert, the one that brought her in, hand-carved a walking staff for her and taught her how to use it against any wild beast on 4 or 2 legs. The Indians made her 2 pairs of strong moccasins and leggings to wear, and she had skins rolled up to use to keep her warm or to make new clothing during her trip. She was given a bow and a quiver full of arrows strapped to her back. They also gave her charms to keep away evil. One of the boys gave her one of the best hunting dogs to go with her. It had taken a shine to her anyway. The men folk told her to stay high on the ridges so she could see what was going on below her and no one could sneak up out behind her. She had been taught about the weather signs, how to follow the stars, and shadows of the sun and direction. With what she learned from the Indians and from us, everyone knew she would be all right. She cried and hugged everyone goodbye, and off she took up that mountain path, looked back only once. Everyone cried. It was written in 3 or 4 of the journals that the women folk were greatly saddened by her leaving, and also written that the family was quiet for a week after her leaving, as if in mourning. They never heard from little Susie again. They hoped and prayed that she made her destination and was not caught by those southern planters looking for her. She had been added to the evening prayers for years after that. I still have a quilt that Susie made with my grandmother. Their names are sewn down in the bottom corner of it, as well as the date. I also have a few charcoal drawings of her that was drawn by Uncle Charles. She stopped for a minute, checked out her recorders, and we checked out our recorders again and changed tapes and turned pages in our notebooks. One of the boys from West Virginia College asked, "Ida Mae, had Sully's families ever tried to get in touch with you before now?" She said, thinking, "I don't think so, honey. I think the family just found out those papers that Sully had written, like my family had taught her to do, and they read them and put the puzzle pieces together. I just think they found out about Spit Creek, West Virginia, where it was. And after the newspapers got a hold of the story and the television people got a hold of it, it just sort of snowballed. All those news people swarmed up here like a bunch of locusts, and then it was when I told them I'd only taught the students of American and Appalachian history, and I told them not to come back up here unless they wanted to be shot. My men folk came out and stood by me. Guess that was message enough. If I was going to have an open talk about this stuff, I think the young people ought to have the first dibs on this story," she said, choking. I'm going to finish there. The story does go on about Sully. I'm not going to tell you what happens. Something wonderful. But I'll let you all, if you would like to have got them. Would you like to ask me some questions?
What inspired you to write?
This may sound kooky.
Can you repeat the
Of course,
question?
gonna, what?
Repeat the question.
Repeat the question.
What inspired you to write?
Well, like I said, I've got a vivid imagination. And I've listened to stories. And it came to me basically in dreams. I think it was the want in me to write something different. And the dreams came, and they're still coming. And I basically write when I dream. But what are dreams? It's nothing but a vision of your imagination. That's all it is. So they helped me. That's why I write. Yes. Come on, ask me a question, somebody.
How long in your life have you felt compelled to write?
I have to tell you, remember I told you I had a beauty shop? And I did little people's hair. They were children. And in order to make a child hold still, I would tell stories. And pretty soon, people were sitting there listening to my stories as I cut their children's hair, and other people would come in. And of course, if you want a child to hold really still, especially if you're working with clippers, you tell them something scary, and they're just like, and they hold completely still. And you can cut their hair, and it's over with just like that. I started telling stories in the beauty shop. And I started telling stories to some of my adult customers. And they loved them. And they said, Teresa, why don't you write these down? You've got all these stories. And I kept thinking, I'm really not smart enough to get it down the way I want. So I would take notes and I would write some stories down. And then I started taking classes at Southwest. And I would take a class here and a class there because there was nothing good on television. And I took 2 of Tandy's classes. She taught at Tazewell High School. And there was something about those classes. And she amazed me that a woman could really have that such a great expanse of writing and telling you things to write about. I read the book that we're supposed to, and it was amazing. So I started writing really for her. And then I started writing. So it was in the 80s. It was in the 80s. In the 90s, I started writing more. I sat on this book. I started writing this book in 2000. I had it in a drawer. You know how you put stuff away and it's just like, oh, I'll come back to it later. I'd come back to it, erase some, and add some more. And one of my friends that has been published, she said, I was telling her about how I got this story, and I just don't know when I'm through with it. I just don't know. And she said, how long have you been sitting on it? She said, I told her, 18 years. I said, it's like my baby. You know, when you first book you write, it's like your child. Your heart and soul and blood and tears and everything goes into this. Awake nights. And I said, I've sat on this for 18 years. And she said, if it's your baby, it's 18 years old. It's time to get it the hell out of the house. And so I said, well, okay, I guess you're right. So I tweaked it and sent it. I couldn't believe they said, we want this book. And I was like, oh. And it happened so quick after that, I was like in a tailspin. It happened. I didn't know people wanted my book. My God. Now Amazon's got it. You know, I'm selling them. I'm having book signings everywhere. My book is being juried right now at Tamarack. I'm at what is that called? Heartwood in Abingdon. I'm at the Art Center in Richlands. I'm at Crab Orchard Museum. I've done a couple of book signings in Tazewell. Another family store wants me to come down and put books in her store. And I'm going and delivering these books at these places because they're running out. They're calling me, Teresa, we need some more books. And I'm like, are you kidding me? I never knew it would be like this. I had no idea. I've got a book of poetry, Appalachian poetry. I'm hoping I can get that out by spring. It's done. I just have to get it in order. The poems have been written for 20 years, some of them. I'm getting rid of them. Because this stuff keeps, it's like, okay, I've got this book out of my head. Out of May has gone. I started writing on the sequel to this book. I'm on the 3rd chapter. It continues with Stephen Weaver, the boy from Concord College. He goes back to the mountain. I believe that with what I'm thinking about, the sequel should be, you know, a lot of times sequels aren't as good. And I have that fear. I do have that fear. That when you see a movie and then you see the sequel, you know, Star Wars 2, Frankenstein and Dracula, you know, how many times you're going to see Frankenstein? And it becomes bothersome. And it worries me about the sequel. So I really feel like I'm going to have to do a greater effort to grab your attention and keep you interested. I've had really good response that people have bought the book and written me. Bless her heart, this is a woman from Maryland. She wrote me and she said, I think I may know your families that did this. And I know them, I know where they work. And I wrote her back and I said, darling, this is fiction. No, this is real. I couldn't convince her that this is my imagination. The Cooks and the Jewells are my mother's, I'm a Jewell, I'm married. That's my married name, Jewell. My mother's maiden name was Me. My grandmother's maiden name was Cook, so I used Me, Cook, and the Jewells. I promise you, this is fiction. And I told her, I said, but I thought, well, I'm not going to tell you more. God bless her. That's what she thinks. Yeah. I'm originally from West Virginia. I know exactly where it's from. And I thought, how precious she is. And this one boy, he's from Washington, D.C. Mick Ayers is his name, and he's a musician. He is sending me CDs and everything of his work. And he sent me some of his stuff. And I told him, I said, do not send your things like this because you don't have them copyrighted. And you do this, don't send your stuff to people that's not copyrighted. I'm having to teach him via Facebook, don't send these things, darling. You know, and he says, I know this story's real. I know that you're trying to hide something. I know this is real. So, you know, you can sit on them and get them out, and then you've got this work to do because you've got to go to book signings and you answer questions. I don't know how many times people have asked me, is Ida Mae real? She's real to me. You know, I can see her in my imagination. Where is it? I drew her what Ida Mae looks like. I see her. I know her. She's an old mountain woman, the ones you see sometimes at the first of the month at the grocery store. You see in the churches in the back. They're there. Ida Mae lives. She's in every one of us. Any more questions?
I had Abraham go downstairs and pick up a copy of today's newspaper.
Yes.
Because your story about little Suli and her background, and you went all the way back to the African continent for that. For those of you who are curious, the First Lady Melania Trump actually was in Ghana.
Yes.
And she walked through the door of no return. So it's in today's newspaper, so see how contemporaneous all of this is. It's
I saw on the news where she went yesterday evening. I saw that.
just for the benefit of our folks who are in
Nothing
the
really
audience.
Nothing
You touch on something that's real in the story.
Nothing new under the sun.
So,
Isn't that something? I'll have to get the paper on.
yeah.
Yeah.
You
I'll
can
read
have this one.
In my book, the students ask hundreds of questions about her mama and daddy and how they survived and what they did. One of the students asked her, it was close to Halloween, did you all have Halloween? She said, honey, there's enough stories up here that scare you every day. We don't need Halloween. And she talks about, there's a woman that lives a couple of ridges over that took care of animals. She would grow a garden, and everything that she grew was for the animals. She took care of the deer, the raccoon. Her name was Zeddy. Everybody called her a witch. Now, in Appalachian culture, there's always some granny woman that's called a witch. She may do herbs and healing or whatever. But Zeddy had a special gift. Zeddy could change. Now, this is all the stories that go around. You know how rumors go around the mountains. They'll tell a rumor, and in 20 minutes he'll come back and hit you in the back of the head. It'll make that much distance. It gets back to you. Zeddy could change. They called her a changeling. That's a different type of changeling than the Irish Scots changeling. She could turn into any animal she wanted. I've got a picture of Zeddy that I drew. She's explaining to the sheriff that came to her house why she didn't answer the door, and she said, I just flew in. She was in her bird form, and she sat down, there's feathers all over her, and she's got a raccoon in her lap. And they want to take her off to an insane asylum. She has one niece, family members, only one's lived. And the town sheriff down on the river, down in town, gets in touch with the doctor and the ancestor to go and check her out and see if she needs to be institutionalized. Well, after the doctor and the sheriff find out that she thinks she's a bird, they said they'll be back in a week to see her again. They come back in a week and knock on the door, and they hear rustling. And there she sits, again. And she said, told her, Zeddy, we want you to come with us. We're going to give you a place to live, and you'll never have to worry about anything the rest of your life. You'll be well taken care of, all the medicines and care you need. We'll take care of you. And she said, I don't think so. No, I'm not going. And well, Zeddy, and she turns into a doe, jumps on the kitchen table, and she has a large window open above the sink, and she jumps through the window and gets up on the hill and looks back at them, and they're dumbfounded. They leave off the mountain basically way quicker than when they got up. And on the way down, a bear comes down and looks at them and walks away. A wildcat comes down and waist down and looks at them and walks away. And they knew they weren't looking at real animals, they were looking at Zeddy. And no one ever bothered her again. And the cornfields and the cane are still growing there. The root vegetables are still growing there in the back. And there's still animals all around the house. No one saw Zeddy in her human form again. But the children up in the mountain, they were taught, don't shoot anything unless it's for food. Do not hurt any animal up here because it could be old Zeddy, and you don't want to hurt Zeddy. And it was a lesson learned to be kind, basically, to be kind to animals. But that's Appalachian. You can scare your kids to death to keep them from danger, and they would understand it. I have a friend that had lived on a road in Whitewood. I don't know if you know where that is. It's in Buchanan County. And the coal trucks, zoom, 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 zoom. They couldn't keep animals because they were always hit and killed on the highway. So he had two little girls. And he told them, if they put their tennis shoes, their feet, on the crack of that highway, they'd drop dead. So they stayed in the backyard. You couldn't get them to go into the front yard into that highway. But he did that so he could save his children. Because little kids run around crazy. They don't worry about danger or boundaries or anything else. But if you tell them they're going to drop dead, if their feet touch the pavement, that black hard top, they would drop dead. That's how they grew to be adults. You did that with your children. You told them things. You taught them stories. You didn't preach to them like, do not go out there. It's dangerous. You can be hit by a truck. And they're automatically thinking, I can see a truck coming out. But if you tell them something that's like a story, scary story, they'll believe you till the day they die. And that's just the way Appalachians are. That's how you control your children. Honey, if it wasn't for the booger man, I would not have been able to raise my child. Yeah, that's true. You have to just tell them stuff. What else
So
would
did you
like?
talk about the Appalachian authors that you've read and loved and that inspired
Oh,
you?
my goodness. James Steele, Denise Steele. What's Jenny Steele?
Gardenia.
Yeah, I love her.
Right.
Okay, I've got this. The woman that wrote The Tall Woman. The Tall Woman. Also,
Is that the doll maker too?
The Doll Maker, she wrote both of them.
The doll maker and the
Yeah.
tall woman. Where did Jamie go? Help us, Jan. Is it
Who wrote The Doll Maker?
And the tall woman.
I can't think of it either.
But I love the doll maker.
Oh, I love The Doll Maker.
Is it
Saints
Richard
by the River.
Montanari?
Yeah, it's a she.
Who?
It's a she. She said Richard, but I said no, a doll maker and the tall woman is a female.
Harriet Arno?
Harriet, yes. Harriet what?
Arno?
Arno, yes. What was that? The River Broad. That was amazing. Saints by the River. I love short stories. I read everything I can. I've been to a lot of Appalachian seminars that are amazing. They are amazing. I also carry another tradition like this. Now, I don't play an instrument, but I'm in a bluegrass band. Me and my husband have bluegrass kinsmen, and I sing and write. I write music. But it's a tradition if up in the mountains, if you don't play an instrument, you better sing. You better sing. And if you can sing tenor, alto, and lead, you're all right. My husband plays every string instrument there is, and is a master of every one of them. He'll play anything with strings on it. I have to hide his tennis shoes, drives me nuts. But I love Appalachian authors, and I read a lot of local. I love local, and I think you should support your local artists and writers. It just, I don't know, it's like family, it means something, you know? And I buy just about every book that's out there. Somebody I know, Ada Lee, what is her last name? She's written quite a bit. I have bad things with names, I swear. I've got 3 or 4 authors in the Jewell area that write, and I read their stuff, and I love it. I just love the way the Appalachian mind thinks. I love it. It's clean. It's good. It's trusting. Unfortunately, it's been undermined. But I teach, upon occasion, I teach Appalachian studies. And I teach right now early American literature, which I'm not really fond of. It's like watching paint dry. But the other one, but the part after the Civil War, when I like that. I love the literature after the Civil War. But my dean has talked to me about doing a creative writing class next semester. And I may do Native American literature. I studied that at Redwood, and I absolutely adored it. And that's interesting. They have a voice, and their poetry is so beautiful and heart-wrenching. I love it. I love it. Anything else? Have I bored you to tears? Oh, God. But I don't know what else to do now. Where did Jamie go? Jamie has left the building.
Well, I'm curious about your research methods or the extent that you research.
Okay.
Mhm.
I did ask some people that lived on farms up in the mountains, like, what did you all do? What did you do in the springtime when it's planting season? Do you plant? And what did you plant? And what seasons are what? And in the book, I tell about the family going to. They have a hill there, a knoll. It's called Strawberry Hill, and there's wild strawberries, and they take buckets and buckets and buckets with them to pick the wild strawberries. Okay. Then during planting, all the children had to work. Everybody pulled their weight. And they planted, and there was different crops that were, they had their winter gardens that were closer to the house. Your cabbages, your turnips, your pumpkins, your squash, your winter gardens. They put up stuff, and how they put things up and preserve. Do you know what leather britches is?
Mhm. Dried beans.
I just had a pot. Thank you, Jesus. I swear, I love them. If you do not know what leather britches are, do you like green beans? Do you like fresh green beans, fresh and dry? You can't get them at Christmas, can you? Oh, come to it. You take green beans And you got this long needle with a long thread and a big knot. And you take it through each green bean. And you make a string. It's really quite pretty, decorative. And they're strung green beans. And you hang them in the loft or somewhere dry, warm. And they dry out. And they turn somewhat brownish and grayish. And you think, when you look at them, you think, I'm not eating that rotten stuff because it looks bad. But you can take it off that string, soak those bad boys in salt water overnight, and all of a sudden, when you start adding heat to them, you rinse them, put them in with your fatback, whatever you use, pork. And they turn this pretty green, and all of a sudden, they're alive in the pot. It is the best food. It's got a little bit of different taste than green. I mean, it's green beans. You'll know it's green beans. But it's got almost like a nutty, smoky taste to it. And they're very good. It's preservation is how they did things. And in the summer, they would have honey trees. And they would get the honey. And they would have honey all year because they knew where the honey trees were. With the strawberries, that had jam. There was jam making. And they had a place that they kept their jarring and canning. They had full gardens. They lived off the mountain. They had their corn and tomatoes and whatever. They had everything. But they would have what they could eat, and they preserved a great deal because they never knew what would befall them. There was apples that came in 3 times a year. You've got your June apples, and then later in the summer you've got your winter apples. They put up apples like crazy. And the kids would take their little wagon. They had a cart, I guess you would call it a cart, with a mule. And they would go and harvest the apples and the pears and the cherries. And it's fruit forever. It was very abundant. And those kids worked. And they had fun doing it. And their food was venison. Their food was turkey. They never had a turkey. I made in this, I shouldn't even say it, but anyway, this book, they never had a turkey on Thanksgiving night until later. They didn't know it was supposed to be that. They had turkey every once in a while. They knew it had to have for Christmas, and they always killed the ham in the fall. You killed your pork in the fall and hung it. They had a smokehouse, and they fished. So they ate well. They ate very well. And every once in a while, there would be a beef they would kill. But the funny thing, that was like a blessing of the mountain, well, all these others, they might have been there, the families might have been there 50 to 75 years when other pioneers started to come across. Some of them got in trouble with the Indians or whatever. And while their animals, the oxen and some of the horses and chickens, would make their way to the top of that mountain. So just about when they're run out of the hog, there'd be some wild hogs they'd find that they'd bring in and make them, put them in a corral type thing and keep their hogs. And they had oxen and they had cows for milk. And they ate, like I said, they ate very well. They knew how to make cheese and preserved meat, smoking meat. And they had a big smokehouse. And they had their ham and their bacon and their side meat, or ham hocks, jowls, and all that for cooking. They didn't go without food. Never once. They were so blessed they never went without anything. And just when they thought they were about to run out of jam, it was berry time again. So they had it planned pretty good. They dried apples. They put them they put them on the roof at times, and they would set out an oilcloth and set out sliced apples, and they would dry their apples. They also strung their apples like you did the leather bridges. And they had apple pies, apple dumplings, apple fritters. They ground their own corn. They had cornbread or biscuits every day. It was amazing. They all worked, but they did play. They had time for play. There was a waterfall and a place that was dug out that they could go and swim in, and hay rides in the fall. There was danger. There was danger, especially during the berry pickings time. They would bring their own mule with them, and a couple of their dogs. They weren't allowed to go out without dogs. And because of snakes. And yet, if you know anything about mules, a mule will stomp a snake to death. And a beagle or a hunt dog will grab a snake and give it a shake and take the head right off the body. They protected those children. They were protected by the animals they killed. You'll read about that too, if you get it. Anything else? Good? Are we good?
We're going to have the book signing ceremony.
Yeah, we'll have a book signing.
If any of you wishes to purchase the book, I believe it's $15.
For 15.
And at this time, I'd like to ask Dr. Coxon, our president, to go to the front.
Jewell, it is an honor to have you here.
Oh, it's my honor. Trust me, it's my honor.
And it's been so wonderful to listen to your stories. I know your perspective has been fascinating to our students and faculty, and I'm so glad they've had a chance to hear your stories. And you know, I think we could listen to these just about all day.
I'm available.
To understand but we are so honored that you're here, and we would like to present you with a certificate, a very small token of our appreciation for your joining us.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you for being with
Oh,
us.
I loved it. You all are so kind. Thank you. I was like this.
And I think she wants to get a picture of us.
Who is she?
Stick around, guys. The pizza is on its way.
Thank you.
Thank you again, and enjoy the reading.
Oh, yes.